Hello. Welcome to another episode of the Practitioner Scholar, a Penn Chief Learning Officer podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Marie Eard. To familiarize you, for those who don't know, Penn CLO is an executive doctoral degree program through the University of Pennsylvania's Graduate School of Education. The course of study focuses on organizational learning, leadership, and development within the public and private working sectors. It is also known as a Scholar Practitioner program, where there is an academic research component, meaning what is learned can be applied to the workplace through best practices. I'm a current student of this program, and our guest is an alum of the first cohort of the program. In this edition, we will meet Dr. Raj Ramachardran, a trusted talent advisor, an experienced business leader focused on helping executives and their teams courageously navigate the complexities of their roles and the challenges they face. As a senior partner for Kiefer's leadership advisory practice, he collaborates closely with colleagues and clients to broaden the firm's ability to improve quality of life through impactful leadership. Dr. Ramachardran is a 25-year veteran in leadership consulting, dedicated to enriching the lives of his clients, their institutions, and the larger world. He has assessed, advised, and coached CEOs and top teams to help them create the conditions for operating at their purpose-driven best, to positively impact their organizations and customers. Dr. Ramachardran received his Bachelor of Science degree in biochemistry from The Ohio State University with a minor in philosophy and his master's and doctoral degrees in education from the University of Pennsylvania, Penn's CLO program. I'm looking forward to today's podcast, and the word that comes to mind is transformation. Our topic is leading the charge, reshaping executive leadership for the modern age. The nature of business and society is rapidly changing, as are the requirements of executive roles. Historically, job descriptions emphasize skills and knowledge gained from work experience. Consider that the what, instead of leadership behaviors and attributes, which are the how and the who. Our conversation aims to equip current and aspiring executives to rethink essential behaviors and mindsets pivotal for success in today's fast-paced world. We'll chat about the importance of modern leadership, focusing on actionable strategies to become more adaptive, impactful, and ultimately successful. If you are committed to being a forward-thinking leader who not only excels but shapes organizational excellence, you are in for some inspiration and motivation. So join us. Welcome, Dr. Raj Ramachardran.
Thank you, Lisa Marie. First, it's great to be here today. As you were talking, I was just thinking, 25-year-old veteran makes me feel distinguished and old. It's amazing to think how long that's been, 25 years.
Wow. First off, you are not old, and I think I will call it very seasoned and experienced.
Seasoned.
And I just want to say, may I call you Raj?
You mean you don't want to call me by my full name, Rajesh Pattabhiraman Ramachandran? That doesn't roll off the tongue? Yeah, you can call me Raj. Raj is totally fine.
I appreciate that. I definitely appreciate that. In your experience and in my opening, I covered what I would say, considering it's 25 years, I covered a very brief version of your background.
Right.
Can you tell us more? Give us your journey story and what inspired you to pursue an advanced degree in the UPenn Chief Learning Officer program?
It's a great question. And I know as we talk today, it'll come out in different stories that I share. One thing, if I were to simplify it, Lisa Marie, there's almost like just two parts to it. There's the earlier consulting part of my career, which was focused on systems technology work. And then there was the leadership consulting work that I've been doing for the last 15 or so years. But I'll tell you this, here's the interesting thing for me, at least. Ever since I graduated from The Ohio State University, which is funny that the is now a thing, I knew I wanted to go to get a master's degree. I just didn't know what I would do with it, right? So I applied for like an MBA, an MHA program. I did all these things, but I ended up just getting into consulting, fell into it. And I got sidetracked, honestly. I got sidetracked with the consulting world that it is. And in around 2006, I stumbled on this article in ATD or ASTD at the time, and it was about the Penn CLO program. And it was intriguing to me because it was something about leadership and talent and how it needed to change. And I got really curious about it, right? So anyway, I was doing some consulting work for this client near Philadelphia. And I sent an email to the program dean at the time, and I asked if we could do a 1 hour lunch. And he graciously accepted. It was great. But it turned into a 2.5 hour program design session. And we were ideating about the program itself and what it could be and designing the blocks. We actually thought about all that way back when. And then he basically said, "Are you interested in the program?" And I said, "Are you sure?" "Yes, absolutely." So it came from there. It was one of these wild little things where you just never know where a little meeting can take you. But to actually see the program and where it is today, it's pretty phenomenal to me.
I totally understand. You never know where the inspiration strikes, right? So, Raj, how have your experiences shaped you? Can you share a pivotal moment or challenge that influenced you?
It's such a good question. And there's obviously all of us, we have so many experiences, but there's one that particularly I think is relevant. I was actually born legally blind. I was diagnosed with congenital cataracts when I was 10, or when I was born, obviously. So I had 10 operations on my eyes before I was 10 years old. So I couldn't play sports. I wasn't coordinated enough. So I basically fell in love with books. And I became an avid reader, and I stayed more to myself, if you will. I was actually very much an introvert, which I think you would understand. And I thought I was going to go to med school, right? Because I had all these operations and basically doctors saved my eyesight. So I thought I was going to be an ophthalmologist. And that's what my love for healthcare and science kind of came out of that, if you will. But here's the thing. I came across this quote. It was a Helen Keller quote. I must have been in middle school or something like that. And the quote said something to the effect of, "The only thing worse than being blind is having sight but no vision." And that just inspired me, right? This notion that it comes down to realizing that physical sight alone is not enough to truly understand. So for me, it inspired my purpose, which I didn't realize at the time, obviously. But it was all about, how do you help people and myself gain perspective, right? That's actually what I love doing, is creating these light bulb moments. But it's all about perspective. And that's where it informed the way I operate and how I think and just what I love doing.
Interesting. You may not have gone the way of ophthalmology. However, you did study biochemistry with a minor in philosophy, and then you followed that up with your advanced degrees in education. You're so diverse. How have these diverse fields informed your approach to leadership, consulting, and coaching?
So funny you say that. You can call it diverse. At the time of me going through all that work, it almost felt like I had no idea what I was doing. Like you're meandering through your life and career. I think Steve Jobs once said you can only connect the dots in reverse. So now it looks like it was all by design. It clearly was not, right? These are things that I think are very interesting. I'm a product of the public school system in Ohio. I grew up in small town Ohio. I made average grades through most of my schooling. Honestly, it was really nothing out of the ordinary. And for me, deciding to go to Ohio State, it was close to family. I wanted to be close to family. We lived in Dayton, so it was 90 minutes. It was easy to go there. And I said why I wanted to study biochemistry. The philosophy piece was interesting. It was literally freshman year, and you take these intro classes, and I took the intro to philosophy class, and I loved the professor because he was a musician, and he would always play his guitar and somehow he turned lyrics into a philosophical lesson. Like he'd be playing the Beatles, Let It Be, and then that turned into a philosophical lesson. I was like, that is so cool. So literally it was one of those silly things where you like a professor and it turns into a thing. And that actually was interesting too, because one of those summers I took organic chemistry, which is the Weeder class when you want to do pre-med. And I took it at a local community college in Dayton. It was a summer school thing. And I discovered what really good teachers can actually do in terms of making a difference, right? This particular professor, he had practical chemistry experience in the industry, and he made the class much more interactive. And he would apply that experience into the class, which made it so much more interesting, right? When you have people with experience. And that is what kind of informed the way I think about it, right? And I think about education and learning. Why does it have to be the way it is, which is a typical dry lecture with someone on the chalkboard? Why couldn't we make it more engaging? And that's what inspired me to want to try to get into education and learning. So it was really interesting that kind of those moments kind of shape your life, if you will.
That is really interesting. And I'm listening to you and thinking about leadership and your vision at the time and what
Mhm.
you do today.
Mhm.
So I want to just move into today and just ask about your expansive view of leadership. We speak about organizations and their transition, and really curious to find out how can organizations transition from static historical definitions of leadership to a more dynamic behavior driven model. And in that, are there key challenges organizations face and how can they overcome these challenges?
There's a lot in there, Lisa Marie. So I feel like I want to break that down because, as you said that first, this notion of static, I don't think anything is static, right? I think everything is always constantly moving. We just don't necessarily see it because it's operating at different speeds. But what I can tell you is, and everyone you talk to probably believes this, it's gotten a lot faster. Everything, the cycles are moving faster thanks to technology and all the stuff that we're seeing. So I get that piece. But I do want to start with the fact that I don't think it's static. I think it's always evolving. It's just a question of speed and velocity. So let me do this. As you asked that question, it inspired me to think about even this notion for me. Like I was thinking back to my career and kind of thinking about what are those 2 or 3 characteristics of the best leaders that I worked with and what made them effective. And that goes into this topic of adaptive leadership or the stuff I'll talk about with what I noticed. But when I started doing some research, Lisa Marie, it kept leading to this notion of what did the best leaders do? What made them different? And I started looking back at things, and I like history as well, so throw that in there. If I could have minored in one more thing, it would have been in history. But what I loved is I remember thinking back to the 90s. So you probably remember Daniel Goleman, like that book, Emotional Intelligence, came out in 95. And I remember reading that book, getting blown away. Remember, biochemistry major in college, and I'm taking this org behavior class, and I stumble on this book, and I go, this is amazing. And it was all about relationships and social awareness and empathy. And I thought, wow, this is going to be the game changer of the decade. So in the 90s, I think relationship seems to be what it was all about: communication skills and teamwork, collaboration. And then you fast forward to the 2000s, and I don't know if you remember, that was like Jack Welch retires from GE, obviously 9/11 happens, and there's this whole kind of move towards execution. So I thought this guy named Larry Bossidy and Ramcharan wrote this book called Execution. And it was all about this notion that every great leader has an instinct for getting things done. How do we architect and design processes and systems to drive things to get done? So I always felt, okay, that's what it's about. It's all about getting results. And then I forwarded to the tens, and I think about there's Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and even Mark Zuckerberg, this whole idea of creating compelling visions of the future, entrepreneurship, that this is all big in the tens, I think. And I always thought maybe that meant that great leaders are the ones that have clear vision, just simple, compelling, clear vision. That's what makes for great leadership. So I was thinking about this in this framing of these 3 lenses, if you will. And then it made me wonder, Lisa Marie, what about this decade? So if I were to throw it back to you and think, hey, if you were to use that logic of the 90s was all about emotional intelligence and relationship skills, maybe the 2000s are all about execution, and the 10s were all about vision and that kind of leadership. What do you think this decade is all about? What would you say? What do you think this decade's all about?
Innovation.
Yeah. Yeah, innovation seems to be really hot again. But here's the key. So one logic could be that maybe we go back to the 90s and it repeats itself. So we need to go back to the age of relationships, because what's going on out there in the world, innovation is really key. But if you don't have those relationships, what's the point of being innovative? Or if you can't connect and collaborate and build these relationships, then what's the point of being all this great innovation? I could go back and argue it's all about the relationship again. We need to go back to that skill, if you will. But I think the real trick, and this is what you're getting at here, it's about adaptive. So I think the real kind of head fake is you need all 3. It's not one is better than the other. You need to know that there's points where you need to be more visionary and innovative. There's points where you need to be more relationship oriented and collaborative. And there's points where you just need to get things done and execute. So it's all three of those lenses I think are really key.
Okay, so I like that. And we're hearing that your work focuses on adaptive leadership and this framework about the lenses. So, can you give us a clearer definition of adaptive leadership and kind of delve in more about your framework?
So first, I would say this, Lisa Marie. Adaptive, I like the word agility. You could argue mean the same thing, right? Adapting to the moment. But being agile requires you to understand context. Everything is about context matters. So I think even this notion, because you even said, hey, it's about innovation. You're not wrong, but it's very contextual, right? Depending on the organization you're at, depending on the environment you're in, being really clear and understanding what the context is really key. So I can give you like an example. I'm working with this one client. It's a big hospital system, and they're looking for their next CEO, right? Their next leader. And we were looking at about how to help them with this, and we talked about these lenses, and we talked about what they needed. But they're in a part of the country that isn't really agile. They're not an innovative part of the US, if you will. They want to serve their community, they want to do well. For them, it was all about execution. They're really well managed, but their next CEO, they want them to be someone that continues that, right? But it's all about relationships with them. So what we realized in the search process was, as opposed to finding like that CEO that is going to be the next Elon Musk of healthcare, right? What they realized is they needed someone that could really drive execution, keep the wheels on, as well as connecting to the community, to the patients, to the people in the network, if you will. Those two lenses mattered quite a bit. So I think when we say adaptive, it's really being present in the moment and understanding context. Does that help?
It does. And I also hear a little bit of flexibility. I know in one of our conversations, my favorite word is pivot. Having the ability to pivot, building on those relationships, being a little bit innovative. And that's where it sounds like the agility comes in. So you're able to understand the setting that you're in and then leverage which part of the framework actually works to your advantage.
I agree with you, Lisa Marie. It is flexibility, but it's also fluidity in that. The ability to know, I say context, but you have to know when to use that visionary lens and when to use that more kind of execution lens. But I think the best leaders that we've come across, they almost do it without you knowing it. They're very good at being able to zoom out and then zoom in. If you look at the way and then zoom across to connect, they have that ability to be very flexible, but it's fluid. It just feels like it's in the moment. And that's why we appreciate that, right? Because you got to know the context. But I think the term is right. Flexibility is key, agility. It's just being really good. And it takes cycles. What I've learned is this is not a one time. It's like when we do these kind of things that we're doing right now, you have to practice it, you have to work on it, and then make it look natural. But it's a lot of the work behind it to help these leaders do that. And that takes a lot of self-awareness. That's the key to all this, which it's in our research and kind of what we do. We call it the inner scope. It's that self-awareness. Know thyself. I think I forget which philosopher said that, but know thyself, right? Maybe it's Aristotle. I think that is like such a key thing to know what you're good at, where your opportunities for development are, and how to complement that with your team and others. So that's the kind of crux of it, if you will.
That's some great advice. And it follows up into my next question. What advice would you give to aspiring leaders? And these are folks who are really motivated and wish to thrive in their environment, and especially looking at today's complex organizational landscapes.
Yeah, there's again, there's so many things you can do, but I keep coming back to the self-awareness thing. All of the research and you look at even what's going on with the world today, we can get very caught up with the externalities and not understand that literally these are kind of shadows or reflections of us. So understanding yourself or being more self-aware, I think is critical. But if you were to ask me, like, how do you get better at that? What is the things you can do? There are lots of things, but I think I like keeping it simple if you can. I can come up with 3 or 4, maybe 5 things. But one thing I would say is write down what your plans and priorities are. What do you want to go accomplish? What are those goals? So being really clear and explicit. I'm a big fan of like development planning and kind of being specific with what you're looking to go do. Like setting your intentions, I think is really important. So that's a key element you can do. Taking these psychometric tests. You've probably heard of a Hogan or a DISC. Not really a fan of MBTI. It's there. You can do all these kind of assessments. Having that idea of taking an assessment and seeing what it tells you about yourself is really good. And then asking like trusted friends. But I found for me, I call it a breakthrough, but it sounds obvious, but like literally asking trusted friends, hey, what do you think I do? Where can I get better? And it was fascinating. I just did it in a text. And I said, can you tell me, what do you notice about me and where do you think I can improve? And it was fascinating to get some of the results from that piece. Asking for feedback is another one. I'm sure in your organization, you get performance reviews. As opposed to waiting and doing it annually, do it a little more regularly in terms of asking for feedback. And then I love just journaling, writing things down. I said earlier, but like even reflecting and putting it on paper is a really key way to drive that. And the last thing I would say, something I more recently discovered is meditation. And not to get all spiritual about it, I think just the art of meditating, just getting some silence and giving yourself some space to breathe and to think and be in nature. Those are all great ways to create more self-awareness.
I love that. And I really like how the methods are so intentional. And especially while a person is looking into where they are, but also figuring out their gaps. I think the methods that you described can be really advantageous to someone who just takes your advice and moves intentionally in those directions. So I'm going to move on and I'm going to ask, move on, but move back, because I really am stuck
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
innovation because I think I'm
Yeah.
at that point in my life where I'm surrounded by artificial intelligence. So we know that change is all around us. And here we are in this world of AI. And I'm certain there are so many more advances in technology that I don't even know about. So thinking on that and thinking how work is shaped and work is performed, are executives and leaders challenged with driving innovation in their organizations? What's your thoughts?
Oh my gosh. So again, we talked about background. I had the good fortune in one of my jobs to work with, I don't know if you know the name Clayton Christensen. He's the godfather of this term called disruptive innovation. And he was a Harvard Business School professor, really fascinating individual on both the business side as well as he's got a strong spiritual side as well. But what was fascinating about this whole idea of like even defining the word innovation, that struck me because I get this a lot with, we want, like I said earlier, we want innovative CEO or innovative executive. And I start with the idea of what does it mean to be innovative? So I'll work this with you. We'll do this as a real-time kind of workshop, if you will. If I were to ask you, do you have an iPhone? Do you use an iPhone right
I
now?
do.
You do.
I
Okay.
do.
Do you feel like your iPhone is innovative? How would you respond to that?
Yes, the iPhone is innovative technology in comparison to the telephone and
Yeah.
the uses for the telephone. Yeah.
Yeah, but what about your phone right now? The phone that you have right now, which whatever version, do you have the iPhone 12? What do you have? 14,
I have
15?
a
I don't know. What.
14.
Okay, 14. So do you
Mhm.
find that phone to be innovative?
It is. I would say
It is.
yes.
Okay, why do you think it is?
The different features it has, yeah, the features, the camera, the
Okay.
GPS, all the features that I guess if I didn't have it, I probably would feel lost. If you're talking about innovation as a tool, it is innovative.
Yeah. So you're getting to something really interesting with this idea, right? Because when I talk to people and I ask them about their devices and I'll ask them, is your phone innovative? And they look at it and say, I got the latest device. It's fine. It's an upgrade. It has a nice camera. It does cool things, whatever. But they don't really find it innovative. And then I go back and I ask you the question, or ask the question, the original iPhone, which came out in '07, do you think that was innovative? And most people will say, yeah, that was amazing. And that iPhone was absolutely amazing. And I was like, wow, fantastic. Do you want that iPhone now? And they would
No.
say, no. And I'd be like, why not? And they're like, because it's old. Like, my iPhone is so much better than the original iPhone. But let me hold on. Wait, you said the original iPhone was innovative, and what you have right now is not. So the problem is this. I think we need to clarify the original iPhone was a disruptive innovation. It changed the game, right? The touch screen, no keyboard, the fact you could get on the internet. It was amazing when it came out, right? It disrupted the way we live. The current iPhone is incremental, right? So it's incrementally getting better. So it's got a better camera, it's got a better screen, better battery life. It's incrementally better. So we don't notice that. So the problem is when we say we want innovative leaders, we don't ask the question underneath that is, do we want the incrementally better innovative leader or do we want the disruptive innovator? Those are different things. And we have to clarify that when you're looking or when you think about the organization, because people get it all confused in terms of what they're really looking for when we say innovation. And that's going to make or break how it works in the organization.
That's a mind-blowing mind shift, looking at incremental versus disruptive. Never thought about that. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because the language that we use and the words that we use really important. In all my kind of research and understanding this stuff and trying to help people navigate, we tell ourselves these things. We have these stories. We play them again and again. We have to be really mindful of the words that we tell ourselves because that can change the way we think about a concept or an idea or how we apply things. Microsoft was a client years ago. And again, I wasn't there for this part, but Satya Nadella, he learned about growth mindset from Carol Dweck's work. But what's fascinating is when he became CEO of Microsoft, he really embraced growth mindset. But he would say things. He goes, we want to move from being a know-it-all company to a learn-it-all company. Because Microsoft would hire really smart people. And they would fight to the death in terms of who was smarter. Because that's what Bill Gates and Ballmer, the former CEOs, loved that. They said, we have the smartest people in the world. We just can compete. And then the best ideas will win. When Satya took over, he actually changed the paradigm. And he said, no, we have really smart people, but the problem is the competition's outside. It's not here. So he said, we need to learn. So he made it a learn-it-all culture. And they got really curious. And how do we keep going and growing? And what do we need to do to think differently? Fascinating how they applied the concept of growth mindset and how it worked in the organization. I love those kind of things, but the words matter.
I agree. I definitely agree. Now, based on your insights and your experiences, how do you foresee the evolution? We're speaking a little bit about it, but can you go in more about the evolution of executive leadership roles in the future, and especially considering how the pace of technological advancements and societal changes are happening?
I don't have a crystal ball. You can be a futurist, and there's actual jobs say you can do called futurist, and they can help define this stuff. I can't say I know how to do that, but to me, yes, artificial intelligence is a disruptive technology, like the way the internet was when it came out. I think what we see with AI and tools like ChatGPT and Gemini and all these other things, it is changing how we do things for sure. I think the more you see technology, the more I think these things like having more self-awareness or simply listening, like actively listening is really key. Being 100% present in the moment, not getting caught up on your phone or whatnot. I think these are critical skills. Asking open-ended questions like what you're doing right now with me and us having a dialogue. These are really important. And I think those are the skills that we need to continue to foster, not just in our leaders, but in our students to help say, hey, asking better questions. I was doing a session with a client yesterday where all we did was help them think about asking better questions to a problem. Because immediately you want to go into solution mode, right? You want to go into solving a problem. And I'd ask the question, are you even solving the right problem? Right? To take the step back and asking better questions or thinking about the problem differently. That'll shape the answer. So those things I think are really key. As much as technology is this tsunami that will continue to hit us, I think we need to step back, create more self-awareness, and do these things like actively listen, like asking better questions and being 100% present.
I love it. So let's circle back to your time in the UPenn CLO program. What was your dissertation topic and what was your inspiration?
I love this question, by the way. This is just fascinating. So I did mine on the theory of expertise. So the idea is like, what makes an expert? And I was just, again, fascinated by the best of the best in their given profession. So if you were in sports, what made you really good at playing golf or a chess player or a musician? Like what made you really good? I was just like, that whole thing got me. But it was also, I was a consultant working in a big consultancy. And we as a firm, we were trying to figure out like, could you think about expert consultants? What does it mean to be an expert consultant? Because part of consultant is to be able to be more diverse and having these different ideas or thoughts, but how do you create expertise? And that was actually what I studied, right? So my research was used with the firm I was at where we created an expert career track. For those that didn't want to be a sales partner, they could go into this expert model and say, become an expert in supply chain or become an expert in artificial intelligence, which wasn't a thing at the time, but technology. So you have this notion of you didn't have to just go in this one path. Creating a new path was really cool to be able to be a part of that. And it ended up being the model that that firm still uses today, which is neat to see it being used. But my inspiration was just that curiosity. I like asking questions, as you can tell. And that question was, why do we only see experts in certain fields and not in the fields that we're in, like in consulting?
That is fascinating. Being a student myself at the moment and contemplating my area of research, and I'm sure that there are others out there, what advice would you like to share when it comes to contemplating your area of research?
What's fascinating about that question is the fact that it's got to be something you're interested in. So I know what's the expression? A good dissertation is a done dissertation, right? The idea of just getting it done. I get
Yes.
that. But I also think it should be something you're really interested in because it becomes part of your identity. Like you asked me, this expertise, I still use that stuff. So I think it's something where it becomes part of your identity. It's almost like a tattoo, right? Literally, it's seared onto your soul or into your whatever, your brain. Like it literally is something that it's really hard to remove. Once you decide to do your dissertation on topic X, it'll be there and you're going to be almost, I would say, fall in love with the question. You have to have that research question. Fall in love with that question because that is going to be the question that you're going to be asking for the next X years as you work through your doctorate.
And I'm hearing, but can you explain a little more, expound a little more? How has the Chief Learning Officer program shaped and influenced your leadership transformation?
Again, at the time, I didn't know. And it goes back to something my father-in-law actually said. So my father-in-law, he was an educator in India and he was actually a computer science HOD, head of department. And the school that he was HOD at was the school where Satya Nadella went to college, just to give you some other additional thought there, right? But what was fascinating was when I asked my father-in-law for advice as I'm thinking about contemplating going back to college, and mind you, on my side of the family, I'm the only one to have a doctorate in my entire family still. So this is the first time that anyone on my side went back to go get a doctorate. And my father-in-law's advice was so interesting because he basically said that education, it'll be with you forever, right? It doesn't go away. It can never be taken away from you. Like it literally becomes a part of you. So when you think about a program like Penn CLO, for me, it's something that I use honestly every day. Like this whole idea of critically thinking through issues. And when you're doing your dissertation and lining up those chapters and the way you describe things, like doing the lit review, like the research out there on a given topic, and then identifying what's the question you're trying to address, and then doing the research to address it. I use that concept, at least the framework, all the time. Even when I was doing the research for these lenses, we did the canvassing of what's out there in terms of the marketplace. We followed kind of the model, if you will. So I find it really useful from just the tactical knowledge, but honestly, the best part is relationships. I had Adam Grant was actually a professor at the time. This is before Adam Grant blew up and became Adam Grant. So at the time, this is before the book Give and Take. And it wasn't even called that. I think it was called Pandas and Peacocks. It was something else. I remember sitting in that lecture going, this guy's amazing. The access to the professors and the connection points that you make with your classmates, it is wonderful. So I don't know how to describe it other than I use it all the time. And I really am very grateful to be a part of that program.
I love it. Thank you. I really gave you some tough questions. I know I did. So I'm going to just give you a lighter question to move us
Whew,
through.
some softballs. Okay, great.
So leaders often face high levels of stress. What is your go-to method for unwinding after a hectic week?
And again, this is really important because so many of us are struggling with this right now, especially coming off the pandemic, and it was tough. I don't think this is anything crazy, but there's three things that I like doing. One is the meditation. I think it was my aunt that said this: meditate before medicate. So that's one. The second is the gym. Just getting to the gym. I learned pickleball recently, which has been crazy. Everyone's kind of talking about it, but I'm actually doing it. It's awesome. Obviously, kind of weight training, whatever, just using the steam sauna. But the third is just walking in the park with our dog and my wife. I call it talk therapy. We just talk it out, and it's nice to be outside in nature. So for me, those are three things that I try to do pretty regularly.
Nice. So, what is the best piece of advice you've given that you didn't take yourself, but should have and may still?
This stumped me. I guess here's what I would say, Lisa Marie. I'm a type A personality. I think going through our program and the work that we do, we're pretty much type A. And I would say I'm much harder on myself than anyone else is. And I always say to people, you need to be more compassionate to yourself, right? That's like this idea of, hey, be more compassionate when you make a mistake. You may have a certain day that you're not playing your best, but I actually find it really hard to do that myself because I have such a type A where, not like you aspire for perfection, but like everything that we do, you want to be at your best. And there's moments that we're not, that show up. So I think just having more of that compassion, that I need to continue to work on that myself, because I do tend to be really hard on myself.
I think I can relate to that as well. Okay. Final question. If you can be a superhero duo, what would be your superpower? What would be your superhero name? And who or what would be your sidekick and their superpower?
I would be Raz, and I don't know why I came up with that name, but Raz, and I would have the superpower to be able to help everyone identify their true purpose and then achieve it. And the sidekick would be my wife. Her name is Lakshmi, but we'd call her Lucy. And I think her superpower is to make people laugh more. She's really good at just bringing laughter into situations. And I think we all need to learn how to laugh more. So that is, to me, I'd be the deep purpose guy and she'd be the fun laughter person.
That is beautiful. I love it. I love it. I love it. Raj, thank you again for your time. This has been truly inspirational, motivational. It's been amazing. So for anyone who would like to contact you or follow your work, what is the best way to do so?
I'm on LinkedIn. I like to post things not as regularly as I would like, but I'm continuing to get better at that. So just looking me up on LinkedIn is great, or then going to our website, wakekeeper.com. There's a lot of really good research that we put out there and just a great way to connect with people. So those are the two ways I would say.
Thank you, Raj. This was great, but it's a wrap. So thanks again, Raj, and thanks to everyone for joining another episode of the Practitioner Scholar, a Penn CLO podcast. Until next time.